The Dance of Death, Strasbourg, in the year 1518. Something extraordinary happened. Imagine a heatwave. Not just any heatwave, but one that pressed down relentlessly on a city already struggling under the heavy burden of hunger, poverty, and disease. A city already buckling under the immense weight of relentless famine, pervasive poverty, and rampant disease. This was Strasbourg in July 1518, a city teetering precariously on the very edge of collapse. And then, amidst this suffocating despair, something truly inexplicable began. Priests offered fervent prayers, while bewildered doctors scratched their heads, their conventional medical knowledge failing them entirely. Their initial, bizarre diagnosis: hot blood. Imagine the historical context: a population ravaged by abject poverty, widespread famine, and recurrent waves of devastating diseases like syphilis and leprosy. By early September, the frenzied, uncontrollable movements had gradually tapered off. The hastily erected stages stood empty and desolate. The haunting, repetitive music fell silent. The exact number of victims lost to this bizarre affliction is tragically lost to the mists of time. It was a terrifying, visceral glimpse into the very depths of the human psyche when placed under immense, unbearable pressure. And ultimately, far more thought-provoking than any work of fiction could ever aspire to be. It compels us to ask profound questions. What happens when societal stress reaches an absolute breaking point? When the very boundaries of reason and rationality begin to blur and dissolve? And how do we, even in our supposedly enlightened age, truly begin to comprehend the mysterious and often unsettling workings of our own minds and the collective human experience? But contemporary chronicles suggest that hundreds were afflicted and dozens perished from its relentless grasp. Strasbourg slowly and cautiously returned to a semblance of normalcy. But the chilling memory of those weeks, of the uncontrollable, agonizing dance, lingered in the collective consciousness like a haunting, dissonant melody. Add to this the omnipresent, suffocating fear of damnation, of divine retribution, and the pervasive belief in the imminent end times. It serves as a stark reminder of how profound a human belief, pervasive fear, and collective anxiety can shape, distort, and even dictate our physical and mental realities. Under such extreme, prolonged psychological stress, the human mind is capable of manifesting truly unimaginable physical symptoms. The power of collective suggestion, amplified by shared trauma and anxieties, creating this bizarre, self-perpetuating phenomenon. In this scenario, the initial individual acts of dancing could have triggered a cascade effect, with the collective belief system reinforcing and spreading the physical symptoms. Was it the body, or the mind, that ultimately broke first under such immense societal pressure? Their proposed solution, astonishingly misguided, was that the dancers needed to dance it out. In an attempt to facilitate this, they went to extreme lengths, setting up makeshift stages in public squares, hiring professional musicians to provide accompanying melodies, and even constructing a special hall to accommodate the growing number of afflicted individuals. They genuinely believed that this would be a cure, a way for the body to expel the strange malady. Instead, it proved to be catastrophic. The music, far from calming the frenzied movements, seemed only to fuel the delirium, drawing in even more unwilling participants into the terrifying vortex. The death toll, tragically, began to mount. Victims succumbed to heart attacks, strokes, and sheer, agonizing exhaustion, their lives consumed by the relentless, involuntary dance, something that defied all reason, confounded the most learned medical minds, and utterly shattered every conventional notion of human control. One prominent and compelling theory points to ergotism, a form of poisoning caused by the ergot fungus, which commonly grows on rye, a staple grain crop at the time. Ergot contains powerful alkaloids structurally similar to LSD, known for their ability to induce vivid hallucinations, severe convulsions, and uncontrollable muscle spasms. Given the widespread famine and the often poor grain storage practices of the era, the contamination of rye bread with this fungus is a highly plausible explanation. This could account for the physical compulsion and the altered states of consciousness observed. It was a phenomenon so bizarre, so terrifying, etching itself into the annals of history as the Dancing Plague of 1580. On a sweltering day in mid-July, an ordinary woman named Frau Trafia stepped out of her house, onto the ancient, cobbled streets of with no discernible music, no apparent celebration, and no clear motivation. She began to dance. One person became 5, then 10, and soon, dozens of citizens found themselves ensnared in the same terrifying, involuntary trance. Men, women, and even young children, they all danced. Their faces became contorted with the sheer physical exertion, their bodies twitching uncontrollably, their clothes drenched with sweat. There was absolutely no joy in this macabre dance, only a relentless, agonizing compulsion that seemed to drain them of their very life force. The once bustling streets of Strasbourg were transformed into a chaotic and horrifying stage for a bizarre, communal ballet. People would collapse from sheer exhaustion, their bodies trembling violently, only to inexplicably rise again. compelled by that unseen infernal rhythm. Some danced until their feet were raw and bleeding, their shoes falling apart from the ceaseless motion. Others, tragically, simply dropped dead, their hearts giving out under the relentless strain. It was not a joyful jig or a graceful waltz, but an insistent, almost desperate movement. Her body seemed no longer her own, propelled by an unseen, internal force. Hour after hour, she spun and swayed, a solitary figure consumed by an insistent rhythm. Locals initially watched, perplexed by this peculiar spectacle, their expressions shifting from curiosity to growing concern. This was clearly not revelry. It was something far more unsettling, far more profound. She danced for a day, then 2, then 3, without any discernible rest, without food, driven by an unseen, relentless compulsion. Her endurance was as unsettling as her movements. Within a single week, this bizarre and terrifying affliction had spread with alarming speed. The city authorities were utterly desperate, facing an enemy they could neither see nor comprehend. How does one combat a plague of motion? To this very day, the true cause of the dancing plague remains a source of intense academic debate and historical fascination. However, other scholars argue persuasively for mass psychogenic illness, often referred to as mass hysteria. As mysteriously as it began, the dancing plague began to subside. The event became a cautionary tale, a bizarre and disturbing footnote in the annals of history that profoundly challenges our understanding of illness, of societal vulnerability, and of the fragile, often permeable, line between the physical and the psychological. The dancing plague of 1518 wasn't merely a strange historical anomaly or a fleeting moment of madness. The past is not always what we expect. Sometimes it is far stranger, far more terrifying.
If you enjoy history's weird, twisted, and forgotten events, subscribe for more uploads.